Happy January, everybody. I hope that your new year is off to a very good start. I have a whole bunch of updates to get through. I'm not gonna lie, I'm way behind. This last harvest and busy season, I definitely went into hibernation for the last month, from early December until early January. So I'm playing all kinds of catch up. With that in mind, this video is likely going to be a pretty long one. So down below in the description, you can find different timestamps of all the topics I'm going to cover. You can kind of hit those as we go if you want to parse this out a little bit, or if you just want this to be some lovely background noise for the next, few minutes or more, a lot more probably. Feel free to just let it roll and go from there. The topics I got to cover today. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. We're going to start with a quick 2021 harvest recap. Just let you know how this last growing season went. We officially tasted through everything 2021 last week. And we have some just awesome notes to share with you, kind of where things are shaping up. 2, our release schedule, things that are coming out this year. Some of the new wines that are in bottle, getting ready to go, as well as a couple of changes to that release schedule, just based on what is going to be available. This is largely just taking into account the year of 2020 and the fires that came in through. There are just a few slight adjustments just to give you a quick heads up on what's going on there. 2 is going to be travel and events and things around the country, including our wine cruise that's happening in July. It is back on. We are pumped. And we are very, very, very hopeful that with the more recent Omicron surge of COVID, that will come to pass, as with all the other previous surges, and we're going to be able to get out on the road and around the country again this year. This last little bit of 2021, it was so good to see and be seen. We're hoping to continue that into the new year. Last but not least, I do have one major wine update in regards to our Cabernet Sauvignon. I'm going to save that for the very last. Again, feel free to fast forward to any of those timestamps just based on what we have listed down below, and we'll get you where you need to go. So to get started, 2021, the most recent wines that we have in the cellar here. Listen, it's kind of a cliche that a winemaker's favorite wine is always the newest one. And it's true because we're just always so excited about what we have to share, because every single year you're trying to improve, trying to do something better, and continuing to grow and evolve kind of within your own program. And 2021 is the 3rd year that I was out on my own, doing this with no day job and no distractions, and to not have any crazy events really get in the way. It was just a stellar harvest. It was almost easy. In fact, I was stressing myself out because I wasn't stressed. That's what kind of harvest it was. It was very, very strange, because we had our white wines and what we're making into some rosé come in, that went through fermentation, and we put it to bed and it went into aging. Then our Merlot came in and our Cabernet came in, and we got through those fermentations, pressed everything off, and got that away for aging. Our Pinot Noir, oddly enough, was the one wild card this year because it came in later than everything else. It was literally the last thing that we ended up pressing off. And that came in, fermented, went right in the barrel, and here we are. It was just kind of lined up to knock it down, which happens fairly regularly, but usually you have those few days or even a couple of weeks in some cases of overlap between lots where you're just jam-packed with everything and you can't tell which way is up because you're literally, feels like you're drowning in grape juice. It's bonkers, but it's why we love doing it, and it's just what makes it such an amazing time of year. But because it was so structured and just so well laid out, it was just kind of like, boom, all right, that's done. We can move on to the next thing. And starting with those white wines and a little bit of rosé that we're making, some of you might have seen some of the teasers for the new label that we have coming out. The HBIC has more information on that coming out in the next month or so once we get that bottled up. We do have a little change in the white wine lineup. And that's really kind of the biggest shift for MTGA, is that unfortunately we've had to move away from Riesling in our lineup. Quite frankly, as much as I love Riesling and as much as I've loved making it over the years, it has been an absolute chore to try and keep it in the lineup. We go on these little hiatuses of making it for a year and then that vineyard gets torn out, or we make it for a year and a fire sweeps through that vineyard, and it just keeps getting bogged down and we keep missing vintages of white wine. And it's just something that I cannot afford to do. So we found a Pinot Gris vineyard, another beautiful Alsatian variety, something that we wanted to be crisp and clean and just perfect for the spring and summer months. And I have to be honest, you know, if it weren't for my love of Riesling, this would probably be my favorite white wine that I've ever made. It is just beautiful. It's so good, so refreshing. We're going to be bottling that in a little more than a month. We're about 40 days away from getting that into bottle, and it's right where I want it. It's literally, I'm literally speechless thinking about it, because every time you kind of bring in a new variety, or at least for me, it's a little nerve-wracking. You're trying to learn the vineyard, you're trying to learn the varietal and what it does and how to kind of capture what's great about it and run with it. And I feel like, you know, just based on my knowledge of Riesling and working with that over the last, gosh, 8 years, that we got into this Pinot Gris and it was lined up just to kind of knock it down. I'm super pumped with where it's at. I know it's going to be a little something different for some of you, but I promise you we tried to make it in a very, very similar style to the Riesling. That way it's not too much of a hop, skip, and a jump away from what you're used to and what you like to enjoy from our MTGA white wine program. So that is something new and different. That's going to be released in April. Super pumped for that wine. That's really the only big change that happened in 2021 in terms of our wine program. The Merlot came in looking beautiful, as did the Cabernet and the Pinot Noir. And tasting through all those barrels last week, there were multiple of them that you were just like, oh, we could just bottle this up now if we wanted to. Like, it's that good. That's how great 2021 is at the moment. It's just like, oh, there is a huge amount of potential here. And at this stage, I'm just trying not to screw it up. It is going to be an outstanding vintage. The Merlot is very complex, very dense actually. It's got this really great structure to it that will soften up over the next about 18 months worth of aging, but it's going to be just, it's lined up to knock it down. The Cabernet is a new Cabernet vineyard that we actually haven't used before, but you know, Cabernet has been in our program now for a while. We definitely have our sea legs with it, and we'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end of this video when we get into kind of the meat of our Cabernet program and where it's headed. But it's a great St. Helena Cabernet vineyard. In fact, it's actually the same property that I started with back in the day. So that original vineyard happened to be Merlot. They replanted a big chunk of it towards Cabernet Sauvignon, and now I'm purchasing that Cabernet. So it's very full circle, oddly enough, for me and my winemaking career, which is just kind of this beautiful like cherry on top of the cake that I get to enjoy. But it's just insanely good. And it is just very similar to the Merlot in the sense that it's very structured, very dense, and it just shows all of this potential. Now, the big surprise for me, honestly, is the Pinot Noir. Many of you have heard me talk about Pinot as like that adolescent child that just thinks it knows better than you, and it fights back every step of the way. And I'm gonna say this right now, and next week it's gonna completely change. But it is gorgeous right now. Very unlike Pinot, at least in my experience over the last few years of making it, is that normally it does have this little bit of like a hiccup or a valley that it goes through once we get through its first racking, because it just doesn't like being shook up. But for us, it's just like in this beautiful spot. It's so sexy, and it's just, I'm speechless. I'm just thinking about this. My inner Pinot nerd, just like the hamster fell off the wheel and couldn't keep going. That's how ecstatic I am about the Pinot Noir program. Like everything just is, it's just like moving forward in the right direction. We haven't had to have any big, you know, troubleshooting issues or any fermentations that got funky, any leaky barrels or anything. Like everything, I'm saying all this now, and I'm gonna knock on some wood, because I'm really hoping that it just continues this way, because 2021, between, even though it was a hot, very dry growing season, as some of you might know the drought that we've been going through, it is just lined up to be just an absolutely outstanding year. Definitely earmark the 2021s. It's again really tough for California to have bad vintages because of how consistent the weather can be, but this is one where, based on where they're tasting right now, it's just going to be a beautiful way to kind of hit the reset button after kind of the rough and tumble 2020 that we had to deal with. So stay tuned for those. We're gonna have those white wines coming out this spring. The red wines, you'll be waiting a little bit longer, but we'll be sure to keep you in the loop as those continue to evolve and how they're tasting as we're getting ready to release some of those bad boys. So if you're on our mailing list or on our wine club, you'll definitely know when those are gonna be coming out. Now, we're gonna get into our 2020s, and this is something that many of us have talked about. This is that 2020 with the fires. It's like, okay, is there going to be any wine, any good wine coming from Napa? And I'm a firm believer that there will be. And I know that might be hard to believe, and I know that there are a lot of people that would probably argue that point with me. But based on what I'm tasting, based on the wine that I've already bottled up, and based on the wines that are still in barrel aging, we're going to have some great wine from 2020. And I will put my money where my mouth is, and you can try them, and you can be the judge. Now, it did take a lot of kind of cajoling to get those wines where you wanted them to go. And for that purpose, there are going to be kind of some shifts and some changes based on what wines are going to be released. And this will kind of be, in addition to the Pinot Gris being added to the lineup, there's one wine that we will not be releasing this year, and that is going to be our 2020 Black Knight Pinot Noir, the single barrel Pinot Noir that we made from 2019. We will bring it back in 2021, however, 2020 we will not be making it. Pinot Noir in particular, as we mentioned, is just such a finicky variety, and kind of with the rough and tumble year that we had, just getting that wine into barrel, it was still good, but there wasn't that like X factor that really elevated any of those lots to that single barrel wine. So it's still a very great wine. I've been trying at least one bottle a month since we bottled it back in September, and it still tastes great. It's exactly what you would expect from our Bennett Valley Pinot Noir. I'm super proud of where it's at considering the circumstances. But we will only have that Bennett Valley Pinot. We will not be bottling up that single barrel Pinot Noir. That will not be released in about a month, is normally when it would be. It normally comes out in February. So we'll have some library options as well as a little bit of that 2019 Black Knight Pinot that we did hold back. We will re-release that out for those of you that want your single barrel fix. That way, we can kind of bridge that gap until we get to next year's release. Now, where the 2020 Merlot and 2020 Cabernets are just surprisingly good. It's, again, just kind of given that year and kind of the mindset you're in when you're tasting these 2020 barrels, for me, it's like, okay, you're just looking for that flaw. You're looking for something to be wrong. And honestly, I can't find it. They're definitely a little bit different. They are a little bit more structured and a little bit edgier, I would say. Almost very similar to what our 2018s are. They just have a little extra pop and a little extra roughness around the edges, but that's something that smooths out with time, and frankly, I'm not worried about that whatsoever. It's almost akin to what 2011 was, although that was, obviously an extreme where you had this really cool, very structured year, and the wines that were good that came out of that year needed time. You couldn't rush them, and that's why a lot of those wines didn't show very well when they were really young. But you fast forward now, even 10 years down the line, those 2011s are gorgeous. They're amazing wines. I honestly think that's where our 2020 Merlot and our 2020 Cabernet are going to be. They're going to need a little extra time. We are going to be sticking to our normal release schedule with those wines, which means we're going to bottle them up this year and they'll be released next year. We may have a little bit of that 2020 Cabernet bottled up, including our red blend this year. That I'm still working on based on how things are tasting and just kind of how big and rough it is. We may extend the barrel aging on those a little bit, but that, we'll obviously keep you in the loop on. But realistically, 2020 is, I know that there's a lot of skepticism. I know there's a lot of negativity out there towards it. And there were a lot of people that just opted not to make wine, which I think was, a smart decision for many of them. And the reality is that we're only making about a third of the wine that we normally would in a given year. So there's even a very small, very small amount of wine that we're going to have to go around. Merlot, which takes up the vast majority of our overall program, I'm only going to have maybe about 50-ish cases of Merlot. It's going to be an incredibly small year. There's a little bit more Pinot Noir to go around. There's a dash of Cabernet Franc that we might use. There's, a lot of it's still kind of up in the air, but based on what I'm tasting, and we tasted through all those barrels last week as we were going through the 2020s as well, just to do kind of a little compare and contrast, very happy with where they're at. They're definitely in that adolescent phase where they've been in barrel for a little bit more than a year now, and they just need that time. They need to come together. All the components are there between the fruit and the tannin and the acidity and the alcohol, and all those things are there. They're present. They're all kind of fighting for your attention, and the goal over the next few months is to get all those to really come together and meld and just be delicious. So don't take my word for it. When we start releasing the 2020s, I will encourage you to try them and give them a shot. And we'll be honest and upfront about it. We will, if a wine is not where we want it to be, we simply won't release it. I will not bottle anything that I wouldn't drink myself. That's a very strict rule that I have. And if there are any issues therein, obviously we can be in touch and figure it out from there. But realistically, with the couple hundred cases, few hundred cases that we might have from 2020, I'm very excited for where they're going to be. A lot of those, especially on the red wine side of things, will start coming out later this year and into next year. So they still have plenty of time to age before we finally get into them. Now, we got to talk a little bit about travel and events and doing things. And I know there's, especially towards the end of last year and into this year, there's that little bit of, we just hope, the whole COVID thing will kind of ease up and we can get back out into the world. And realistically, we're trying to move forward kind of business as usual as best we can. So we're scheduling trips. We're likely going to be back in the Midwest between, Missouri and Kansas City and St. Louis. We'll probably be up in Chicago. We're heading out to Florida. We're going to Charlotte. We're going to a bunch of places this spring. And then, of course, we do have our wine cruise later this summer. So, when it comes to planning these events, whether it's tastings, privately, whether it's at your home, country club, or a restaurant you really enjoy, you can always reach out to us and we can give you the details and kind of what all that entails. We are doing a lot of charitable events this year as well, so if there's anything in particular that's kind of in your neck of the woods in terms of wine auctions, we are starting to ramp that up a little bit more now that the world's hopefully going to be back to a little bit more normalcy and we can get out and about a little bit more this year. We are super pumped to get back out on the road. And the little bit that we're able to do in November and December this last year, and even just a dash to the Midwest, last summer, it meant the world. And that support and to be able to come out and share a little bit of Napa with you and your friends in your home state, in your hometown, are just, it's one of the reasons why I do what I do. It's, wine for me has always been something to bring people together, and that's why I love hitting the road. So if you do want to plan your own event, tasting, out around the country, please let us know. We have wine, we will travel. Now, that also includes our wine cruise. The wine cruise is something that obviously we pushed back. It was supposed to happen last year, and as you might expect, we pushed it to this year. And the itinerary is bonkers. We start in Venice and we end in Barcelona. So when we hit Croatia, I believe we're in Montenegro, we go around the boot, hit Rome, we hit the south of France, we do stop in the Amalfi Coast as well in there, and then before we end in Barcelona. It's going to be an absolutely bonkers trip. It's a 10-day cruise. This is in mid-July. I have the link down in our notes as well, so if you want more information on that, please hit that link. They are going to start opening up bookings to the rest of the ship, so tickets are going to go really, really fast, starting in by February. So if you need to put down your deposit, and if you're considering going, now is the time to actually literally jump on board. It's going to be an immense amount of fun. We have two of our amazing friends and wines of theirs that we love to drink ourselves, David and Suzanne Tate of Tate Wines, that are going to be joining us. It's going to be an absolute blast. We're going to have our own wine dinner. We're going to have a couple seminars. We have a couple excursions, of course, that we're going to be doing that are all very wine and food focused. It is going to be a complete and utter amazing trip. So if you need that vacation to look forward to later this year, if you need to get out of the house, let's do it. Let's get out there. And of course, if there is anything rocky that happens in terms of travel, COVID, the whole nine, we'll keep you in the loop. The cruise line that we've been working with, Oceana, as well as the company that helped put us together, Food and Wine Trails, have been super, super flexible with adjusting things and working with us to, move this back a full year and help us, booking the itinerary. So, we'll be sure that, if there's anything that keeps shaking up the world, that we will do everything that we can to smooth it back out again. So regardless of all that, we're trying to stay positive and get back out there. There is more information on the Food and Wine Trails website. You can also just Google MTGA and Tate Wine Cruise and it should pop up. But again, the link is below in the notes. So you can see all the details, including the itinerary, the stops, all the perks, including extra shipboard credit and all kinds of other things that you get when you book the cruise through us. So be sure to check out that link if you're interested in cruising with us this next summer. Now, last but not least, Cabernet Sauvignon. And this is something that I mentioned to a couple of really good friends at the end of the month in December. And it's something that I've kind of teased a little bit here and there is, where is this Cabernet program of ours going? Obviously, many of you know the St. Peter Cabernet Sauvignon. Some of you have kind of the fabled 2015 Cabernet that we bottled only in magnums from those early days. But I really look at 2017 as like that first year where Cabernet became a part of MTGA. And it was a long time coming. It also really allowed us to start making that red blend, which was really, really nice. But it's been something that's been kind of, eating away at me a little bit, because I didn't want this to just be another big, jammy, lots of new oak Napa Valley Cabernet. I wanted this to, try and have this wine stand out of the crowd. And the St. Peter has been a ton of fun to make. That marriage of Mount Veeder and St. Helena fruit has just been a joy to work with, to be completely honest. But it wasn't anything that, I don't know, it's not like I had lost my passion for Cabernet or that wine in particular. I just felt like there was more that we could do with Cabernet. And I felt like St. Peter really just kind of pigeonholed us into this, hey, you gotta use these two spots and it's gotta be made this way. And I wanted to honestly have a little bit more flexibility within our Cabernet program to make a couple different Cabernets, number one, but two, also play with a couple different appellations and frankly lean a little bit more on St. Helena, because St. Helena Cabernets are some of my favorite that Napa Valley has to offer, especially when it comes to those valley floor Cabernets. I think it's something that's kind of tough to track down. There's a lot of St. Helena Cabernet out there, but I feel like they can be kind of tough to track down. And that's something that I wanted to kind of start to hang our hat on. So, when we're moving forward, and this is something that I do every year, is I look through, the wines we've made, how much inventory we have. It's all the business stuff, right? Of, kind of where things are at, a good kind of business check-in, and figure out, okay, now where are we going in the next 3 years with the wines that are in barrel? And in the next 5 years, what are we adding? What are we changing? Are we increasing production? Are we decreasing production? Are we, using more Cab and Merlot for the blend? Are we making more Cabernet in general? Like, what is the game plan? And that was what we were doing, last year at about this time, and trying to really figure out where the Cabernet program was going to go. And through 2021 and into harvest, I really set my sight on making a couple different Cabernets. And really, for the moment and the time being, moving away from what St. Peter has become. Now, that doesn't mean St. Peter won't be back. I do love that Mount Veeder Cabernet, and since we are working with some St. Helena Cabernet still, there's a decent chance that we will bring that back into the fold. But for the time being, we are looking to build out and create 2 new Cabernets that will, I think, fit a little bit better into our program than what the St. Peter was. The first is going to be a just solid Napa Valley Cabernet. For those of you that love the repechage, or red wine, or red blend, this is going to be the Cabernet for you. It's meant to be just that killer Napa Cab that is just overlight. Crushable Napa Cab is what we were going for. And it is something that we're going to bottle up a little bit of that from 2020. and see, kind of like test the waters with it. It's going to be a pretty small production, but we did bring in a little bit more in 2021 because of just how good the vintage was. We're making a little bit more Cabernet in 2021. And we're going to see kind of where that Napa Cab goes. So you're going to have kind of our staples of the now Pinot Gris, Merlot, Pinot Noir, be kind of the pillars that hold up MTGA. In the middle there, you're going to have the Repechage, the red blend, as well as this Napa Valley Cabernet. Those are going to be kind of the next two, kind of the second, the next tier up, so to speak. And then above that, you're going to have the single barrel wines, of course, the single barrel Merlot, the Black Knight Pinot Noir, and the fabled Cabernet Franc that some of you will be receiving towards the end of February. And then, even more so, this is something that I had never done before, and I'll tell you what, it was one of the reasons why I started making Merlot back, 11 years ago now. I guess we're getting close to 12 years ago now, but 100% Cabernet. There was so much 100% Cabernet out there that I was like, yeah, we're not making Cabernet. We're not going to do that. And now that we've been at this as long as I have, it's time to bring a little 100% Cabernet into the fold. That Napa Valley Cab that I mentioned, it'll likely be a little bit of a blend. We'll use a little bit of Merlot, maybe a little bit of that Cabernet Franc to, just give it those nice subtleties and kind of balance out that wine a little bit more. But I really wanted to try my hand and say, okay, let's take 100% of this variety and see what we can do with it. So we've completely revamped the barrel selection. I've brought in completely different cooperages than what I've used before. We completely changed up some fermentation practices between, everything that we do during harvest for it. The aging process is still very much a work in progress because this wine is so new. But it's my little science project. It is me literally just trying to take this art form and run with it as much as I can. And there will be a whole announcement. We'll keep you all in the loop when that 100% Cabernet starts coming out. I don't even have a name for it yet. I don't know what I'm going to call it. I'm currently working on the label. I started working on the label 2 months ago because we wanted to do something really cool and really special for it. And it's going to be realistically, likely the new pinnacle of MTGA, kind of what we have to offer. I mean, Merlot will always have that soft spot in my heart. It will always be our foundation and what the rest of MTGA is built on. But this Cabernet that we're going to come out with is going to be something really, really special. Both that 100% Cab as well as that Napa Valley Cabernet. And that's really why we wanted to, I guess, move away from St. Vitor for the time being. It was like, let's see if we can't, not get off the main street, but take this side street and see if we can't get this to lead us to the same destination of really making an impact on Napa Valley Cabernet and run with it with an MTGA flair. You know what I mean? If you've liked our wines in the past, and if you're watching this video, that probably means you do. You're gonna love these wines. Again, kind of going back to those 2020s, I wouldn't bottle up anything that I'm not proud of. These wines I'm incredibly proud of where they're at, from both the 2020 as well as the 21 vintage, and testing those waters with those 2 new Cabernets that are going to be coming out. And I know some of you are going to be sad to see the Riesling go, to see the St. Vitor go. There's no end point to those. They might be back. If we can find a really solid vineyard here or there for Riesling, we might bring it back into the fold. If we can find another really solid, in particular, Mount Vitor property, we'll bring that back into the fold as well. But for right now, I'm going to be a little bit of a mad scientist. I'm going to run with some things, and we're going to see where we end up. Frankly, it's a really fun journey. It's something that keeps me engaged and excited year in and year out as to kind of change things up and see where these new little projects will go. Speaking of the Cabernet Franc that I mentioned, I mean, that's what that was in 2019. It's like, hey, here's this 1 barrel of Cab Franc. Let's see what we can do. What can we do with Cab Franc? Is it going to be just part of a blend, or is this going to be bottled on its own? And that was my little tinkering mad scientist project from 2019. And now in 2020, and particularly 2021, we're shifting that focus back to Cabernet Sauvignon and saying, okay, let's play with this a little bit. Let's dial this in. Let's push some buttons. Let's pull on some levers, and let's see where this goes and where this is going to end up. So I'm incredibly excited about our Cabernet program. It's going to be something not totally different, but definitely new. It'll be right in the same vein as kind of what you would expect from that St. Viator, but being that it's going to be specifically, or it's not going to be coming from Mount Viator anymore in any way. There will be some slight characteristic changes, but we'll make sure that we get some in your glass so that you can try it, and we'll share it with you to make sure that we get your approval, as well. So. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really, really appreciate it. If you listen to this all in one go, you're a champion, a gentleman or gentle lady and scholar, for what it's worth. We really appreciate the support. I mean, thank you so much for an amazing 2021. We're so excited for 2022 and what it brings. Please do keep in touch. I do want to mention that we are going to be dishing out our newsletter towards the end of January. We are going to have a little survey in that. We'd love some feedback on both our wine club, our website, our mailing list. What kind of content would you like? Would you like more videos? Do you want more blog posts? Do you want more live tastings? All kinds of things. We're really looking to provide everything that you want from a wine producer and a small brand like us, and stay connected as best we can. I know between all the social networks and kind of the barrage of information that's out there, it can be kind of tough to weed through all that, so we really want to try and make an impact where we can. Speaking of which, we are going to start doing some Wine Wednesdays, evening Wine Wednesdays, which will be kind of a forum to realistically ask me anything about the world of wine, our production methods. I'm going to basically pop open a bottle of wine. Brittany might blind taste me on something, and I'm going to sit down and we're just going to play some video games and talk shop. Some of you know that I have a borderline, actually not just borderline, it's an obsession with gaming because it's kind of my catharsis and how I kick back and relax. And on Wednesday nights, we're going to go live on Twitch, and we're going to basically just kind of have at it, talk and see what happens. We are going to try and schedule some more virtual tastings as well, especially kind of centered around our new releases and things of that nature. So we will be doing a lot more of that. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. It's been an amazing ride over the last 3 years, being able to work for myself and really dive into these wines and continue to improve on what I do. And it's something that I couldn't do without support from you guys. So it means the world to me. Have an amazing 2022. We'll see and talk to you soon, whether it's here at the winery or out on the road or in the Mediterranean. Enjoy. We'll catch you later.